Hey everyone, welcome back to Bear It In Mind. This video is going to summarise the whole of the attachment topic. This is designed to give you an overview of the whole topic as quick as possible to help your revision. But if you want more in-depth explanations of attachment, you can find a full playlist of videos on each section on the Bear It In Mind YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. And if you want more help with your revision to study smarter and save you time, you can join Bear It In Mind, where you'll find a variety of resources from interactive quizzes, exam paper walkthrough videos, exemplar answers and much more, and the link is in the description too. Let's dive in and summarise the attachment topic. Attachment refers to the emotional bond between two people, where each seeks closeness and feels secure with the other. Let's now summarise the first section, Caregiver-Infant Interactions. Meltzoff and Moore in 1977 studied how infants imitate adult behaviours by observing babies aged 12 to 21 days. They found that babies as young as 2 weeks old could imitate facial expressions displayed by an adult, suggesting early social interaction skills. This study highlighted the importance of imitation in infant development. Reciprocity involves mutual responses, where the infant's behaviour elicits a reaction from the caregiver, reinforcing further interaction. Interactional synchrony refers to the coordinated timing of behaviours between the infant and the caregiver, which helps establish emotional connections and promote social and emotional development. Tronick et al. In 1978 used the still face experiment to study how infants react when their caregiver suddenly stops responding. The study showed that infants initially tried to engage with their mother but became distressed when she remained unresponsive, highlighting the importance of caregiver interaction for healthy attachment and emotional development. Isabella and Belsky in 1991 studied 153 first-time mothers and their infants to explore the impact of interactional synchrony on attachment. They found that secure attachments at 9 months were linked to well-timed, mutually rewarding interactions, while insecure attachments were associated with less synchronous and more unresponsive caregiver behaviours, highlighting the importance of interactional synchrony in forming secure attachments. Research into caregiver-infant interactions benefits from highly controlled observations, allowing detailed analysis of infant behaviours through technology. Unlike studies with adults, infants are unaware they're being observed, reducing the influence of demand characteristics and ensuring more natural behaviour. However, there are difficulties with observations. Studying caregiver-infant interactions presents several challenges, such as determining the infant's intentions, as their limited ability to communicate makes it difficult to infer their true feelings. There is also the risk of observer bias, where researchers may interpret infant behaviours according to their expectations, which can affect the validity of the findings. Additionally, practical issues arise as infants spend much of their time sleeping or feeding, making it difficult to observe them consistently and limiting the length of observations. On the positive side, research into caregiver-infant interactions has been useful in its practical application. This is because it has drawn attention to the important behaviours needed to help the development of an infant, encouraging mothers to engage in social interaction and to respond to the behaviours of their child in an appropriate and timely manner benefit the child's development in areas such as empathy and language. Schaefer and Emerson's research, conducted on 60 infants from Glasgow, identified 4 stages of attachment development. Through regular visits between 6 weeks and 18 months, they measured attachment through interviews with the caregiver about separation anxiety and stranger distress, finding that by 6 to 8 months, 50% of babies showed separation anxiety, and by 10 months, 80% had a specific attachment. Schaefer and Emerson identified 4 stages of attachment. Number 1, the asocial stage between 0 and 6 weeks, where an infant shows similar responses to objects and people, although they do display a preference for faces. Stage 2, the indiscriminate attachment between 6 weeks and 7 months. This is where they develop a preference for human company, but are comforted by anyone. Stage 3, the discriminate attachment, 7 to 9 months. This is where the infant shows a preference for one caregiver, displaying separation and stranger anxiety. And stage 4, multiple attachment, 10 to 18 months. This is where they form bonds with others like grandparents and siblings, though they still rely on primary caregivers for comfort. Schaefer and Emerson's research is praised for being longitudinal, tracking the same children over 18 months, which eliminates individual differences and strengthens the findings about attachment stages. The research benefits from high ecological validity as it was conducted in the family's homes, meaning the observed behaviours were natural and reflected everyday interactions rather than being influenced by a lab setting. This makes the findings more generalisable to real-life situations. However, a limitation of the study is its reliance on self-reports from caregivers, which may lead to biased or subjective data, as parents might overestimate or interpret attachment behaviours according to cultural or social expectations. A further criticism of the study is its limited sample, as all participants were from working-class families in Glasgow, meaning the results may not apply to families from different regions or socio-economic backgrounds. Finally, Schaefer's stages of attachment may not apply universally, as cultural differences could influence attachment patterns. In some cultures, multiple caregivers are the norm, meaning that multiple attachments may develop early, challenging the stages outlined by Schaefer and Emerson. Now we come to the role of the father. Some researchers suggest that societal norms and biological differences may hinder fathers from forming the same attachments with infants as mothers. Traditional views of caregiving as feminine, limited paternity leave, and hormonal factors like lower oxytocin levels in men may reduce fathers' involvement and bonding, especially since oxytocin, which rises during breastfeeding, plays a key role in attachment. Geiger in 1996 suggests that fathers tend to act more as playmates than caregivers, with their interactions being more exciting and focused on fun, while mothers are typically more affectionate and nurturing. Tiffany Field in 1978 found that quality of interaction, not gender, determines the primary caregiver role. Both primary caregiver fathers and mothers showed similar affectionate behaviours. Gordon et al. In 2010 further showed that fathers' oxytocin levels rise with infant interaction. They measured the levels of oxytocin in both fathers and mothers after they had played with their child for 10 minutes, and they did this again 6 months later. They found that the father's oxytocin levels matched the mother's, indicating biological capacity for nurturing and caregiving in fathers. Additionally, research like Schaefer and Emerson's often reflects weird cultures, but in others with multiple caregivers, children form attachments early with others besides the mother, including the father, suggesting the father's role varies across cultures. Researchers like Konrad Lorenz and Harry Harlow conducted animal studies to explore the importance of early attachment between the mother and infant. Konrad Lorenz conducted an imprinting experiment by dividing grey-lag goose eggs into 2 groups, one hatched naturally with their mother and the other hatched in an incubator, and first saw Lorenz. He then recorded the behaviour of the goslings. He placed them under an upturned box, and when the box was removed, he found that the naturally hatched goslings followed their mother, whereas the incubated goslings amazingly followed Lorenz, demonstrating irreversible imprinting. Harry Harlow's studies with rhesus monkeys showed that emotional comfort, not just food, is key to attachment. Monkeys preferred soft cloth surrogates over wire ones that provided food, emphasizing the importance of contact comfort. In fearful situations, the presence of the cloth mother offered security and encouraged exploration. Later research with motherless mothers revealed long-term social and maternal deficits, highlighting the critical role of early attachment for healthy emotional and social development. In summary, Harlow's research demonstrated several key findings relating to the importance of early attachments. Number 1, contact comfort is more important than food when it comes to forming an attachment. Number 2, a secure base is needed to help them explore and be a place of safety in times of fear. Number 3, there are long-term effects to not forming an attachment. Number 4, the critical period. From Harlow's research, it was suggested that the critical period for the monkeys, the time by which an attachment needs to be formed, was around 90 days. The impact of being deprived of motherly care could be reversed in monkeys, but only if it had lasted less than 90 days. If no attachment had been formed by then, that's when the long-term effects were irreversible. Now let's evaluate the animal study research into attachment. Animal studies like those by Lorenz and Harlow support attachment theories such as Bowlby's Monotropic theory, emphasizing instinctive, survival-based attachment formation and the critical period for attachment. Harlow's research also challenges the behaviorist view of attachment, showing that contact comfort rather than food plays a crucial role in attachment formation. However, such studies face criticism for limited applicability to humans. This is because it is unlikely that observations of goslings following a researcher or rhesus monkeys clinging to cloth-covered wire models reflects the emotional connections and interaction that characterizes human attachments. Some researchers have argued that the idea of the critical period, seen in the work of both Lorenz and Harlow, is more of a sensitive period in humans, as studies have demonstrated how children have been able to recover from early deprivation from a caregiver. Animal studies, particularly Harlow's work, have been heavily criticised for their unethical treatment of animals, such as isolating monkeys and subjecting them to distressing conditions. It can be argued that such harm to animals in research aimed at understanding human attachment raises significant ethical concerns about the validity of inflicting suffering for these purposes. Learning theory of attachment, based on behaviorism, proposes that attachments form through classical and operant conditioning. Known as cupboard love, it suggests infants bond with caregivers because they provide food. Through classical conditioning, the caregiver becomes associated with the pleasure of feeding, while operant conditioning reinforces attachment as food rewards the infant and the caregiver is reinforced by the baby's affection, and both experience negative reinforcement when hunger or crying is taken away. A strength of the theory is that it's grounded in behaviorism, which is based on well-researched scientific principles. The controlled experiments of B.F. Skinner, particularly on operant conditioning, lend credibility to the theory and provide a clear framework for understanding how attachments form through environmental stimuli and responses. However, Schaefer and Emerson's research challenges learning theory by showing that the attachment figure is not necessarily the one who provides food, but rather the caregiver who is most responsive and interactive. This undermines the theory's emphasis on feeding as the primary factor in attachment formation. Harlow's research with rhesus monkeys revealed that attachment was more strongly formed through contact comfort than food, directly contradicting the learning theory's focus on cupboard love. A limitation of the learning theory is its neglect of innate biological factors in attachment formation. Bowlby's monotropic theory, which emphasizes the role of natural behaviors like the rooting reflex and social releases, suggests that biological predispositions are essential for forming attachments, something the learning theory overlooks. The learning theory is also criticized for being environmentally reductionist, as it simplifies complex attachment behaviors to basic stimulus-response associations. This approach fails to account for the broader social and emotional context of attachment, which can be better understood through a more holistic view of human interactions, as suggested by theories like interactional synchrony. The other explanation of attachment is Bowlby's monotropic theory. Unlike the learning theory, Bowlby argued that attachment is biologically driven, shaped by innate factors and influenced by animal studies like those of Lorenz. Here are the key features. Adaptive. Bowlby viewed attachment as an evolutionary behaviour essential for survival, where infants are born with biological instincts to help them seek proximity to caregivers for safety and care, such as the rooting reflex for breastfeeding. Social releases are innate behaviours like smiling or cooing that prompt caregivers to respond, initiating a reciprocal interaction essential for bonding and attachment. Bowlby proposed a critical period up to 2.5 years old, during which an attachment must form. Failure to do so could result in long-term negative effects on the child's social, emotional and intellectual development. Monotropy emphasises the significance of the child's primary attachment to one caregiver, typically the mother, highlighting that this relationship is more important than others in terms of emotional development. The internal working model is a mental framework shaped by early attachment experiences, which influences the child's future relationships, including romantic connections and parenting styles. Lorenzi's research supports Bowlby's theory by showing that attachment is instinctive and occurs within a critical period. His study of grey-lag geese demonstrated that attachment forms with the first significant figure encountered, aligning with Bowlby's ideas of innate attachment mechanisms and the critical period. Harlow's research with rhesus monkeys provides evidence for Bowlby's concept of the internal working model. The monkeys raised without mothers lacked social skills and became inadequate mothers themselves, demonstrating the importance of early attachment experiences. Hazen and Shaver's love quiz supports Bowlby's internal working model too by showing a correlation between childhood attachment style and adult romantic relationships. Securely attached adults were the most likely to have good and longer lasting relationships and believe that love endures. Insecure avoidant attached adults were most likely to fear closeness in relationships and believe that love doesn't last. And insecure resistant attached adults were most likely to be needy for love. They fell in love very easily, supporting the internal working model. However, Schaefer and Emerson's research challenges Bowlby's monotropic theory by proposing that children can form multiple attachments rather than just one primary attachment figure. This contradicts Bowlby's emphasis on a singular, special attachment and highlights the role of multiple caregivers and cultural differences in attachment formation. Bowlby's theory has been criticised for being socially sensitive because it places significant pressure on mothers to form a strong attachment with their child during the critical period. This not only blames mothers for any future issues in the child's life, but also underestimates the important role fathers play in attachment. Next, let's consider Ainsworth's strange situation and the attachment types. Mary Ainsworth developed the strange situation, a controlled observation designed to assess the quality of a child's attachment to their caregiver. Ainsworth's study involved 100 middle-class American infants aged 12 to 18 months and their mothers. The observations were conducted through a one-way mirror, allowing researchers to discreetly watch the child's behaviour without influencing it. The procedure involves a series of 8 episodes where the child's behaviour is observed using categories such as exploration and secure base behaviour, stranger and separation anxiety, and response to reunion. Specific episodes were designed to measure how the child interacted with their mother, a stranger, and the environment, helping identify different attachment types. Ainsworth identified 3 attachment types. Secure attachment is characterised by the child using the mother as a safe base, exploring the environment, and showing moderate separation and stranger anxiety. Upon reunion, the child shows joy and is easily comforted. Insecure avoidant attachment is seen in children who explore without seeking comfort from their mother, show little separation or stranger anxiety, and they are indifferent when their mother leaves or returns, often ignoring her. Insecure resistant is shown by children who stay close to their mother and are reluctant to explore. They display high separation and stranger anxiety, showing intense distress when their mother leaves and ambivalence upon reunion, both seeking and rejecting comfort. In Ainsworth's study, 70% of the children were securely attached, 15% were insecure avoidant, and 15% were insecure resistant. A strength of Ainsworth's strange situation is that it's a controlled observation, allowing for standardization across procedures. This consistency enables replication and cross-cultural comparisons, enhancing the reliability of attachment assessments. Furthermore, the strange situation demonstrates high reliability, with inter-observer reliability shown to be very strong, a correlation coefficient of plus 0.94. This means that different observers consistently classify attachment behaviours in the same way, supporting the method's dependability. A drawback of the strange situation is its lack of ecological validity, as it takes place in a controlled, unfamiliar setting that may not reflect the child's typical behaviour at home. This raises questions about how well the attachment types identified in the study generalise to real-life situations. variations. And researchers suggested that a fourth attachment type, disorganized, should be added, as some infants show contradictory behaviors that don't fit into the original 3 attachment types. This may occur when caregivers behave in ways that confuse the child, making them both a source of comfort and fear. A significant criticism is that the strange situation was designed in the US and may not apply universally across cultures. Cultural differences in parenting styles can lead to misinterpretations of attachment types, highlighting the method's limitations when used in non-Western societies. Cultural variations in attachment considers how attachment types may differ across cultures, like the USA, Japan, and others. Individualistic cultures prioritize the self and independence, whereas collectivist cultures value family and community. Van Eysendorn and Cronenberg in 1988 conducted a meta-analysis of 32 studies from 8 countries involving nearly 2,000 participants, all using the strange situation to measure attachment. They aimed to identify both intercultural and intracultural differences in attachment across these diverse cultures. The results of the meta-analysis revealed that secure attachment was the most common across all cultures studied, with Germany showing a higher rate of insecure avoidant attachment and Japan showing a higher rate of insecure resistant attachment. Cultural differences, such as Germany's emphasis on independence and Japan's focus on dependence, explain these variations. The study also found greater variation within cultures than between them. The differences within cultures were 1.5 times greater than the variation between cultures. Now let's evaluate cultural variations in attachment. A key strength of the research into cultural variations in attachment is its standardized methodology, as all 32 studies use the same method, the strange situation. This consistency allows for accurate comparisons of attachment behaviors across cultures without the interference of extraneous variables. However, a limitation of the meta-analysis is that some countries had a low number of studies, which raises concerns about the representativeness of the samples. For example, cultural differences within Japan, such as between Tokyo and rural areas, suggest that the sample may not fully reflect the diversity of attachment types across the country. Additionally, it can be criticized for being ethnocentric. The strange situation was developed within a Western individualistic cultural context, which may not be applicable to other cultures. In Japan, where children are rarely separated from their mothers, the separation episode in the strange situation caused extreme anxiety, as seen in Takahashi's 1990 study, where 90% of children had to stop the procedure due to distress. This suggests the high insecure resistance rates in Japan may reflect cultural norms rather than attachment issues, highlighting the need for more culturally sensitive methods of assessing attachment. Bowlby believed that maternal attachment was crucial for mental health, stating that mother love in infancy and childhood is as important for mental health as vitamins and proteins for physical health. Bowlby's 44 Thieves study in 1944 examined 88 children, half of whom were known for stealing. 14 of the thieves were diagnosed as affectionless psychopaths, and 12 of them had experienced prolonged maternal separation in early childhood, compared to just 2 in the control group. Bowlby's maternal deprivation theory proposes that separation from the primary caregiver, especially before 2.5 years and up to age 5, can result in irreversible damage. According to his law of accumulated separation, repeated separations increase the risk of issues such as low cognitive abilities, difficulty forming relationships, delinquency, and affectionless psychopathy. Bowlby's theory highlights the importance of early attachment, influencing policies like extended maternity leave in the UK, which helps parents bond with their children. Accordingly, it has shaped how vulnerable children, such as those in hospital or foster care, are supported to mitigate the effects of separation. However, Bowlby's research has been criticised. This is because it lacked a control group, which limits the ability to conclusively link maternal deprivation to delinquency. Furthermore, Bowlby's research may have been biased due to his own involvement in assessing the children, potentially influencing his interpretations. Additionally, retrospective data from mothers about past events could be inaccurate, further questioning the study's validity. Another criticism relates to temporal validity. Bowlby's research was conducted in the 1930s, a time of high poverty and societal differences which may limit its applicability today. Changes in social policies, such as the introduction of the NHS and child benefits, make it difficult to directly apply his findings to modern society. Another criticism relates to failed replication. Hilda Lewis's 1954 replication of Bowlby's study, which involved 500 children, found no link between early maternal separation and later criminal behaviour or difficulties forming relationships. And finally, some have suggested it's a sensitive rather than a critical period. The case of Andrea and Vanya, twins who were severely neglected but later recovered, suggests that the effects of early deprivation may not be irreversible as Bowlby proposed. This undermines his critical period concept, showing that recovery and development are possible even after early trauma. Institutionalization refers to the negative effects on children raised in institutional settings like orphanages, where emotional care is often lacking. In the 1980s, Romania's dictator Nicolae Ceausescu pushed for population growth through policies that encouraged large families, banned contraception and taxed childlessness. This led to overcrowded, under-resourced orphanages where many children suffered neglect and deprivation. Rutter et al. In 2010 conducted the English and Romanian adoptees study, following 165 Romanian orphans adopted into the UK, compared to a control group of 52 British adoptees. They found that children adopted before 6 months showed near complete recovery in physical and cognitive development by age 4. However, those adopted after 6 months experienced lasting issues such as quasi-autism, disinhibited attachment, inattention and overactivity, and lower IQ. Chigani et al. In 2001 used PET scans to study Romanian orphans, revealing brain dysfunction in areas responsive for impulsivity, attention, and cognitive abilities, aligning with Rutter's findings. This research underscores how early institutionalization can disrupt brain development and lead to long-term deficits. Research on institutionalization has practical applications, such as the importance of having a key caregiver and early adoption for better child development. However, a limitation of the research is the difficulty in generalizing findings from extreme cases in Romanian orphanages to other institutional settings with better care standards. Furthermore, it can be evaluated in terms of the long-term effects. This is because the long-term effects of institutionalization remain unclear, as the study stopped at age 15, leaving uncertainties about how the children developed as adults. Without further research, it's difficult to conclude whether any developmental delays persisted or if children caught up later in life. Finally, in attachment, we come to the influence of early attachment on childhood and adult relationships. Bowlby's concept of the internal working model explains how our early attachment to caregivers forms a mental template for future relationships. Catherine Kearns in 1994 found that securely attached children form better peer relationships, while insecurely attached children struggle due to anxiety and social difficulties. Hazen and Shaver's love quiz supports Bowlby's internal working model too, by showing a correlation between childhood attachment style and adult romantic relationships. Securely attached adults were the most likely to have good and longer lasting relationships and believe that love endures. Insecure avoidant attached adults were most likely to fear closeness in relationships and believe that love doesn't last. And insecure resistant attached adults were most likely to be needy for love. They fell in love very easily. The data demonstrated the idea of an internal working model because the participants' attachment style when they were younger predicted their attitudes towards love and their experience of love as an adult. Harlow's 1966 study on rhesus monkeys demonstrated the consequences of lacking maternal attachment leading to social and behavioural issues. The monkeys raised without mothers lacked social skills and became inadequate mothers themselves, demonstrating the importance of early attachment experiences. Bailey et al. In 2007 confirmed that mothers with poor attachments to their own mothers often had poorer relationships with their babies, further emphasising the role of early attachment in parenting. Both Bailey et al. And Hazen and Shaver studies cannot establish cause and effect, as they are correlational and lack control over extraneous variables. This limits their ability to conclude that early attachment influences future behaviours in relationships. Additionally, both studies face issues of subjectivity, social desirability, and reliance on retrospective data. Participants' self-reported experiences may not be accurate or objective, as they may recall memories in a biased manner or present themselves in a more favourable light. And finally, there is counter-evidence. Research on Romanian orphans by Rutter et al. In 2010 shows that early attachment experiences can be reversed, as many children adopted early from institutions went on to form positive relationships with a supportive family. And breathe. That's the whole of the attachment topic. For more resources to help you with A-level psychology so that you study smarter and save lots of time, you can check out the Bear It in Mind website. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.